원서 읽는 고양이 깔미입니다. 오늘은 해리포터 1권 Chapter 8 The Potions Master 읽어보도록 하겠습니다. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone Chapter 8 The Potions Master. There, look. Where? Next to the tall kid with the red hair, wearing the glasses. Did you see his face? Did you see his scar? Whispers followed Harry from the moment he left his dormitory the next day. People lining outside classrooms stood and took a good look at him, or doubled back past him in the corridors again, staring. Harry wished they wouldn't, because he was trying to concentrate on finding his way to classes. Staircases at Hogwarts. Wide, sweeping ones, narrow, wicked ones. Some that led someone different on the Friday. Some with a vanishing step halfway up, but he had to win the jump. Then there was a that wouldn't open in his legs politely or taken them exactly the right place. And the doors, there weren't really doors at all, but solid walls just pretending. It was also very hard to remember where anything was, because it all seemed to move around a lot. The people in the portraits kept going to visit each other, and Harry was sure there's a coat of armor could walk. The ghosts didn't help either. It was always a nasty shock when one of them glided suddenly through the door you were trying to open. Nearly Headless Nick was always happy to point new Gryffindors in the right direction, but Pips the Poltergeist were two locked doors and trick staircase if you met him in the way to class. He would drop waste paper baskets on your head, hold rocks under your feet, pelt you with a bit of chalk, or sneak up behind you, visible, grab your nose and screech, "Got you, conk!" Even worse than thieves, if that was possible, was the caretaker, Argus Filch. Harry and Ron managed to get on the wrong side of him on the very first morning. Filch found them trying to force their way to the door and luckily turned out to be an entrance to the off-front corner in the third floor. He wouldn't believe they were lost. We're sure they're trying to break into on purpose. They're tackling to lock the dungeons, and they were rescued by Professor Quirrell, who was passing. The older cat called Mrs. Norris, a scrawny, dust-colored creature with virgin limpid eyes just like Filch's. She patrolled the corridors alone. Break a rule in front of her, put just one toe out of 9, and just weeks off for Filch would appear, fizzing 2 seconds later. Filch knew the secret passageways to the school better than anyone, except perhaps the Weasley twins, and could pop up suddenly as any of the ghosts. The students all hated him, and it was the dearest ambition of many to give Mrs. Norris a good kick. And then, once you had managed to find them, there were the classes themselves. There's a lot more than magic, as Harry quickly found out, than waving their wand and saying a few funny words. They had to study the night skies through their telescopes and everyone's day at midnight, and the different stars and the movements of the planets. 3 times a week, they went out the great houses behind the castle to study biology with a dumpy little witch called Professor Sprout, where they learned how to take care of all the strange person fungi and found out what they were used for. Easily, the most boring class was History of Magic, which was the only one taught by ghosts. Professor Beans had been very old indeed when we had fallen asleep in front of the sapphire fire and got up next morning to teach, leaving his body behind him. Beans droned on and on. We scribbled down names and rates, and got Emerald and Abel and got the Albert mixed up. Professor Fitwit, the charms teacher, was a tiny little wizard who had to stand on the pile of books to see over his desk. At the start of the first cast, he took the roll call, and when he reached Harry's name, he gave a silent squeak and popped up out of sight. Professor McGonagall was again different. Harry had been quite right to think she wasn't a teacher to cross. Strict and clever, she gave them a talking to the moment they sat down in her first class. Transfiguration was some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts, she said. Anyone messing around in class will leave and not come back. You have been warned. Then she changed her desk into a pig and back again. They were all very impressed and couldn't wait to get started, but soon realized they weren't going to be changing the furniture into animals for a long time. After taking a lot of complicated notes, they were each given a match and started trying to turn it into a needle. By the end of the lesson, only Hermione Granger had made any difference to her match. Professor McGonagall showed the class how it had gone all so silver and pointy and gave Hermione a real smile. And the class everyone had really been looking forward to was Defense Against the Dark Arts, but Quirrell lessons turned out to be a bit of a joke. His classroom smelled strongly of garlic, which everyone said it was to warn of the vampire he had met in Romania and was afraid it would be coming back to get him one of these days. His turban, he told them, had been given to him by his African friends as a thank you for getting rid of the traveler's zombies. But they were sure they would believe the story. For one thing, when Seamus Finnegan asked eagerly to hear how Quirrell had fought out as a zombie, Quirrell went pink and started talking about the weather. For another, they had noticed the funny smell hung around the turban, and the Weasley twins insisted it was stuffed full of garlic as well, so that Quirrell was protected wherever he went. Harry was very relieved to find out that he was miles behind everyone else. Lots of people had come from Muggle families and, like him, hadn't had any idea that they were witches and wizards. There was so much to learn, and even people like Ron didn't have much of a hard start. Friday was an important day for Harry and Ron. They finally managed to find their way down to the Great Hall for breakfast without getting lost once. "What have you got today?" Harry asked Ron as he poured sugar on his porridge. "Double potions with these Slytherins," said Ron. "Straight had a Slytherin house. They say he always favored them. They're ever to see that's true." "Which McGonagall favored with us," said Harry. Professor McGonagall was head of Gryffindor House, but hadn't stopped her from giving them a huge pile of homework the day before. Just then, the mail arrived. Harry had gotten used to this right now, but it had given him a bit of a shock on the first morning, when about 100 owls had suddenly streamed into the great hall during the breakfast, circling the tables until they saw honors dropping letters and packages onto their laps. Hedwig hadn't brought Harry anything so far. She sometimes flew in to nibble his ear and have a bit of toast before going up to sleep in the hourly with the other school owls. This morning, however, she fluttered down between the marmalade and sugar bowl and dropped a note into Harry's plate. Harry told open there once. It said, in a very untidy scrawl, "Dear Harry, I know you get Friday afternoons off, so you'd like to come and have a cup of tea with me around 3? I want to hear all about your first week, and send us an answer back with Hagrid. Hagrid." Harry borrowed Ron's scribbled, "Yes, please, see you later" on the back of the note, and sent Hedwig off again. It was lucky that Harry had tea with Hagrid to look forward to, because the potions lesson turned out to be the worst thing that had happened to him so far. At the start of turning Ingrid, Harry had gotten the idea that Professor Snape disliked him. By the end of the first potions lesson, he knew he'd been wrong. Snape didn't dislike Harry. He hated him. Potions lesson took place down in one of the dungeons. It was colder here than up in the main castle, and would have been quite creepy enough without the pickled animals roaming in glass jars all around the walls. Snape, like Figrid, started the class at taking the roll call, and, like Figrid, he posted Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter, our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his friends Crabbe and Goyle staggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class. His eyes were black with Hagrid's, but had none of Hagrid's warmth. They were cold and empty, and made you think of dark tunnels. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began. He spoke in very more than a whisper, but they caught every word. Like Professor McGonagall, Snape had the gift of keeping a class silent without effort. As the laser open foolish when the waving here, many of you hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you really understand the beauty of the silvery cauldron with the shimmering fumes. The delicate flower liquids have crept through many names, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, blue glory, even stubborn-headed. If you're on as big as bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. More silence followed this little speech. Harry and Ron exchanged looks with raised eyebrows. Hermione Granger was on the edge of the seat and looked desperate to start proving that she wasn't an underhand. "Potter," said Snape suddenly. "What do I got if it is firewood with asphodel to infusion wormwood?" Powdered roots of what to do with words of what? Harry glanced at Ron, who looked as stumped as he was. Hermione's hand had shot into the air. I don't know, sir, said Harry. Snape's lip curled into a sneer. It clearly isn't everything. He ignored Hermione's hand. Let's try again, Potter. Well would you look if I told you to find me a weasel? Hermione stretched her head as high into the air as it would go without hitting her seat. But Harry didn't have the faintest idea what a weasel was. He tried not to look at Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, who were shaking with laughter. I don't know, sir. Thought you wouldn't open the book before coming, Potter. Harry forced himself to keep looking straight into the cold eyes. He had looked through his books at the Dursleys, but did Snape expect him to remember everything in 1,000 magical herbs and fungi? Snape was still ignoring Hermione's quivering hand. What is different, Potter, between Mox and Wolfsbane? At this, Hermione stood up, her hand stretching toward the dungeon ceiling. I don't know, said Harry quietly. I think Hermione does, though. Why don't you try her? A few people laughed. Harry caught Seamus's eye, and Seamus winked. Snape, however, was not pleased. Sit down, he snapped at Hermione. For your information, Potter, Esperlin the Wormhole makes a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as a draught of relieving death. A bezoar that's then taken from the stomach of the goat and will safely for the most poisons. As for monks and wolfsbane, they are the same plant, which was also given the name of aconite. Well, why aren't you coming back down? There was sudden rousing for quilling and parchment. Over the noise, Snape said, "And the point will be taken from Gryffindor House for your cheat, Potter." Things didn't inform the Gryffindors that the potions lesson continued. Snape put them all into pairs and stepped them to mixing at the simple potions to cure boils. He swept them around in his long black cloak, watching them weigh dried metals and crush knickknacks, criticizing almost everyone except Malfoy when it seemed to like. He was just telling everyone to look at the perfect way of Malfoy had stood as a worn snark with clouds of ice cream smoke and the loud hissing built the dungeon. Neville had somehow managed to melt Seamus's cauldron into a twisted blob, and their potions was seeping across the stone floor, burning holes and people's shoes. For 10 seconds, the whole class were standing on their stools. Old Neville, who had been distilling the potion when the cauldron collapsed, moaned in pain as angry red boils sprang up all over his arms and legs. "Idiot boy!" snarled Snape, clearing the spilled potion away with one wave of his wand. I suppose you added the porcupine quills for taking the cauldron off the fire. Neville whimpered as the boils started to pop up all over his nose. Take him up to the hospital wing, snapped Jacob Seamus, and they all round Harry and Ron were walking next to Neville. You, Potter, why didn't you tell him not to add the quills? Thought you'd make it look good if we got it wrong, did you? That's another point you've lost for Gryffindor. This wasn't so unfair that Harry opened his eyes to argue, but Ron kicked him behind their cauldron. Don't push it, he muttered. I heard Snape can turn them very nasty. As they climbed the steps out of the dungeon an hour later, Harry's mind was racing, and his spirits were low. He lost 2 points of Gryffindor in his very first week. Why did Snape hate him so much? Cheer up, said Ron. Snape's always taking points over than George. Can I come and meet Hagrid with you? At 5:03, they left the castle and made their way across the grounds. Hagrid lived in the small wooden house on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. A crossbow and a pair of galoshes were outside the front door. When Harry knocked, they heard a frantic scrabbling from inside and several booming barks. Then Hagrid's voice rang out, saying, "Back, Fang, back!" Hagrid's big hairy face had appeared in the crack as he pulled the door open. "Hang on," he said. "Back, Fang!" He let them in, struggling to keep a hold on the collar of the enormous black bullhound. There was only one inside. Hams and Fizzles were hanging from the ceiling. A copper kettle was boiling on its open fire, and in its corner sat a massive mast with patchwork cord over it. "Make yourselves at home," said Hagrid, letting go of Fang, who bounded straight at Ron and started to licking his ears.